Hey everyone, Brett here from Rabbets Woodworks and Games. Today's video is about making dado cuts and rabbet cuts with a Kerfmaker tool. Okay, so here we are in the wood shop. This Kerfmaker, it's a subtraction tool, basically is what it is, and it's used to make joints like this one, a dado joint or a rabbet joint on the edge of wood for shelving units or box making or whatever you might think you might need. So the subtraction tool is basically the reason it's a subtraction tool is basically because it'll subtract out the width of a kerf. A kerf is the width of a saw blade, and so the first thing we have to do is get this set up. So the way I do it, I'll get something that has a nice straight edge. This is a piece of miter channel that you can buy from certain woodworking stores, and I want to set that up such that the straight surface is resting on the teeth of the blade. So I want to lower the blade just a touch to make sure that it's touching at least 2 teeth, but preferably 3. Then what I want to do on this one, I color coded the knobs. I have red and green. Red meaning before I had them color coded, I can't tell you how many times I accidentally loosened the wrong knob and it messes up the setting. So what we're going to do is I have the knob loose right now, and that moves this L piece of wood here back and forth. Well, the goal here is to set the edge of this surface to the edge of that surface, the width of the blade. Okay, so with this straight edge up against the blade, I'm going to bring this tool in and bump it up against the edge of the blade. Slide this over until it touches the blade. Looks like I need to rotate that down just a touch till it touches the blade, and that sets the thickness of the blade. Now in my saw right here I have what's called a thin kerf blade. So most saw blades are somewhere right around 1/8 of an inch. This one is actually closer to, I think it's 98 thousandths. So what you can do is take a caliper and check it once you get it set to make sure that you have it sitting square up to your straight edge. Once you get it set, then you grab your caliper, which is here. Okay, turn it on, and I'm going to go ahead and set it for 90.098. Okay, 0.098. Tighten that down to lock it in place. On the end of the caliper, there's a depth gauge. So what we want to check is we want to see that the depth of this is pretty much exactly the width of the blade. Once we get that set and it looks pretty close, then we're ready to start our setup for our cut. Okay, so again, the color coding, once the red is locked down where you want it to be, don't touch it. Red means stop. Then the green knob loosens this up. Now, in order to achieve this gap, what we want to do is we need to know what the width of this is. Now we can measure it. I can measure it, and it's 3/4 inch stock material. However, sometimes you get plywood or whatever that's like 11/32 or different widths, and this you don't necessarily need to know exactly what it is, because what you're going to do is you're going to set that down right over your piece of wood. You're going to bump it up, and then you're going to tighten the green knob. Pull that off. So what this does then this then becomes the business end here. So the distance from this surface to this surface is exactly the width of the material minus the blade width. So you can see it's the width of the material minus the blade width. So the reason this is important is because when you cut a dado like this, when you cut the first side, the right side of the blade is up against here. When you cut the other side of the dado, it's the left side of the blade. So you have to compensate for that blade thickness in order to get the correct width that you want. What we're striving for is a nice, tight fit that makes a very good, strong glue joint. You want ever so slight, maybe a couple of thousandths of gap. Now these pieces of wood are fairly narrow. If you get a wider piece of wood, you may end up having more warp to it. But most wood is compliant enough that you can get it close. If you need some extra gap when you do your setting, you can always take a playing card or a piece of tape or something to put it on your material to give yourself ever so slightly more gap. There's ways of fine-tuning your cut to get what you want. So if you want a super tight fit, you know, you can just bump it right up against that, up against your stock material thickness. Or if you want a little looser fit, you know, like I said, a playing card or a couple layers of tape or something. So anyway, now that we've got our Kerfmaker set up, what I have here is a crosscut sled on my table saw, and it has a stop block here. So let's say that I want to make another dado like this over here. All right, now I can measure off the edge. Now when you do a shelf, ooh, look at that, I almost made it exactly 1 inch. So let's mark 1 inch. Now these are just markings just for a sanity check. And let's put one at 3/4 of an inch. Okay, past that. So that's the width of our material. If you were using 1/2 inch material, you'd mark 1/2 inch. But basically, now what I'm going to do is I'm going to line up this right hand mark with, clear all of the dust out, with the cut spot on the saw. So before we turn the saw on, we bring that right up and we mark that, we put that right where the blade is. So, you know, sometimes it's a good idea also to put some X's where the waste material, where the cut material is going to be, so you know which side of the blade the material needs to go on. Then we're going to take our Kerfmaker here. Now, the Kerfmaker works like this. I'm going to clamp this in place here. So I butt the Kerfmaker up against the piece of wood, and I butt the stop block up against that. Now I'm going to clamp that down. So now I'm going to make that cut. When I'm done making this inside cut, then I'm going to bump the Kerfmaker out and move it to that surface. Again, the difference between that surface and that surface is the width of our material and minus the blade kerf. So I'm going to go ahead and do that cut. Okay, so now when I do the other cut, it's going to cut the inside cut. So that was the outside cut. This is the inside cut. So I moved from that surface back to that surface, and I butt the piece of wood up against it, and I make that cut. Now, this tool is used whenever you don't want to, like if I only have to make one dado or one rabbet cut, or just a couple, I'm not going to bother setting up my dado blade in here. A dado blade makes it such that you can have anywhere from a 1/4 inch wide dado up to it goes up beyond that, you know, 3/4 of an inch, even up to an inch in some cases, depending on which blade set you have. But now that I have the outside cut and the inside cut, I just need to get rid of everything in the middle. Now, one thing I forgot to mention, and it doesn't matter in this case because it's just a demo, one of the setup things is you want to make sure that you get your blade height correct. In this case, I probably would have gone, because it's 3/4, I probably would have gone 3/4 thick, would have gone 3/8 depth. Just half is a nice round number. But in this case, it doesn't matter for this demonstration. So now I need to remove the rest of the material. So all you need to make sure is you just stay between your inside cut and your outside cut, and to get rid of the rest. Okay, so we've made our cut. We got a nice clean dado there, and when we go to put our piece in, it fits snug, but you can still move it around. It'll give you a good glue joint, and the cuts are perpendicular. It's perfect. There's no way I could be this consistent. You know, if I had to do several of these, there's no way I could be this consistent with my eyeball, or even with a caliper, and marking lines and things. It would take me several shave cuts just to even get close to this, but this will do it perfect every time. I love this little tool. Again, this is my own version. There's a company that makes these super nice. One day when I have money, and because they never seem to have them in stock, I may get one, but for now, this works just fine. I'd like to thank you all for watching today's video. Please subscribe if you like what you saw, and we'll see you again soon. Bye.